The Walt Disney Company and CEO Bob Iger recently brought back two former Disney C-suite executives to help in the transition as Disney tries to shed some of its old weight or non-core items, as Bob Iger referred to them in a recent CNBC interview. Things like ABC or finding strategic partners for ESPN. Tom Staggs and Kevin Mayer were once considered heir apparents or successors to Disney CEO Bob Iger as recently as 7 or 8 years ago. But as we all know, Bob Iger is just a guy that refuses to leave Disney. So is this somehow a move of strategic brilliance on Bob Iger's part, or at least, perhaps to some degree, a tacit admission of failure? Let's talk about it. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. This article from The Hollywood Reporter: Bob Iger taps former Disney executives Kevin Mayer and Tom Staggs to advise on legacy TV assets. Now, to be fair, this story was originally broken by Matt Bellany and Puck Magazine. Go check out puck.news. But he was the former editor at The Hollywood Reporter, and they managed to confirm his reporting in this story, as we'll see here in a moment. Their counsel, Mayer and Staggs, will be sought as the studio grapples with declining linear TV revenues and an unprofitable streaming business after the Disney CEO teased a possible linear channel sell-off. Disney CEO Bob Iger is bringing on board former top studio executives Kevin Mayer and Tom Staggs to help advise on a possible sale of linear TV assets beyond ESPN, including the ABC broadcast network and the FX cable channel. Mayer and Staggs, who co-founded Candle Media in 2021, offered no direct comment on any renewed ties with Disney, but it's understood they have been tapped separately and as consultants to work alongside CEO Bob Iger from Disney, ESPN chief Jimmy Pitaro, and other Disney TV executives to figure out the studio's legacy TV business amid a rapid shift to streaming platforms. Now, the article goes on to talk about the CNBC interview that Bob Iger did about a day after it was announced that he'd be renewed through the end of 2026 as the CEO of Disney, where he kind of shocked everybody in the Disney hierarchy, saying that even things like ABC was on the table for sale, that ESPN would be looking for strategic partners as they move away from linear broadcast ostensibly and into the streaming future. Bob Iger also told CNBC he'd held discussions with potential strategic partners for ESPN that could help the sports giant move to a DTC model and stay under the Disney umbrella. Mayer is usually in demand these days for his expertise in streaming, but his legacy TV credentials are underpinned by his experience at Disney. He launched Disney Plus, Disney's flagship streamer, before being passed over to succeed Bob Iger when he departed as Bob Chapek got that CEO job. Now, with Bob Iger returning again to the Walt Disney Company, he's turned to Mayer as a trusted consultant, along with Staggs, another former top Disney executive. Earlier in 2021, David Zaslav over at Discovery at that time tapped Mayer to consult on the future of streaming at his studio as it moved closer to merging with Warner Brothers and Warner Media to create Warner Brothers Discovery as part of its own pivot from linear TV to the online video space. The Hollywood Reporter understands that Mayer is still actually consulting for Warner Brothers Discovery as, similar to Disney, its legacy TV networks continue to be changed and displaced via cable cutting by streaming platforms. So why then, out of all the possible consultants on Earth, would Bob Iger bring these two back? Well, Kevin Mayer was intimately involved at Disney at a time when he helped to spearhead such major acquisitions as Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and even Fox. And then there was Tom Staggs, who of course was number 2 behind Bob Iger at one point, and who thought very clearly that he would be the heir apparent to the throne of the House of Mouse. But it didn't pan out that way. Here's an article from April of 2016 from the New York Times, behind the scenes at Disney as it purged a favorite son. Talking, of course, about Tom Staggs. For a bit of historical perspective at that moment, let's read from the article. Mr. Bob Iger also appeared to be laying the groundwork for his own next act, to lead the NFL's return to Los Angeles after a 21-year absence. Mr. Iger was granted options to buy minority stakes in the Raiders and the Chargers, and was named chairman of a holding company that would move the teams to Los Angeles and oversee the building of a new stadium and adjacent real estate development. Bob Iger met with NFL owners in Houston in January of 2016 to pitch the deal. According to a detailed account in the Disney-owned ESPN, the magazine, Mr. Iger's legendary charm fell flat with NFL league owners who opted for a rival bid on January 12th. Mr. Iger's franchise options were terminated. Perhaps the timing was simply coincidence. A person close to the board said that the collapse of the deal had nothing to do with Mr. Iger's evaluation of Mr. Staggs at the time, and that Mr. Iger became involved with the NFL out of a sense of civic duty. Had the bid succeeded, it would have at most been a part-time job. In any event, in the following weeks, board discussions about Mr. Staggs' future intensified. Unknown to Mr. Staggs, some on the board at Disney had resisted naming him chief operating officer the year before. But Mr. Iger had prevailed, and those reservations surfaced again periodically, focusing on whether Mr. Staggs was the ideal person to lead Disney over the next 10 years, a period likely to take the company into the uncharted waters of the continuing digital revolution and the post-cable era. As a reminder, this is over 3 years before the launch of Disney+. In mid-March of 2016, Mr. Iger summoned Mr. Staggs to his office and dropped a bombshell. Tom Staggs lacked the full confidence of both Mr. Iger and the Disney board, which had been discussing Mr. Staggs' performance at recent board meetings. Mr. Iger told him that Disney was going to broaden its search for his successor. It was made very clear that Tom Staggs was indeed intended, at least initially, to be the successor for Bob Iger back in 2016, and all that fell apart. And as we know since then, Bob Iger has an absolute refusal to leave the Walt Disney Company, even when he actually retires. As we've cited many times, he wouldn't even leave his own physical office in the C-suite, forcing Bob Chapek down the hall. Now, Bob Iger did not say explicitly that Mr. Staggs was out of the running, but the message was clear. Mr. Iger made no effort to persuade Mr. Staggs to stay. He offered no specific criticisms, according to a person close to Tom Staggs, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to disclose company matters publicly. Instead, Mr. Iger offered only a vague reference to Mr. Staggs' lack of vision. The article goes on to mention that the Walt Disney Company insists that the decision had nothing to do with Mr. Iger's wanting to extend his tenure as CEO and, of course, executive chairman. I'm sure. Given Iger's superb track record at Disney, he could surely stay as long as he wants. Unlike the situation when Mr. Eisner left, Disney is by no means in crisis. The animation unit, film operations, and theme parks in particular seem to be firing on all cylinders. My, oh my, how times have changed in the past 7 years, Mr. Iger, have they not? But the person who has close ties to the board told me that the board members have been keenly interested in succession for Mr. Iger, and given Disney's history, very aware of the perils of a chief executive who stays too long. Oh, are they really? With Mr. Staggs gone and no other obvious candidate to take his place, the board may have little choice but to beg Mr. Iger to stay. Again, folks, that was the New York Times from April of 2016, and look at the state of affairs now. Everything old is new again, and I don't think it's any happenstance that Mr. Mayer and Staggs are back at the Walt Disney Company. Certainly they have wonderful internal, intimate knowledge of everything that Disney is facing right now because they were there as boots on the ground when all of this was being established. Of course, this was ultimately all done at Mr. Iger's behest. And now maybe they're being brought back in as a statement by the board to say, perhaps the predecessors to this board that sits there now in 2023 may have made some mistakes, and maybe it's time to correct those mistakes. Or maybe it's just Mr. Iger finally tacitly admitting that he's failed as CEO. Somebody who has overstayed his welcome and the board seems completely inept at being able to get rid of. As I've said before, I thought it was an admission of failure by the board itself when they renewed Mr. Iger for 2 more years a couple of weeks ago. And I also think this is what, at least in part, precipitated the departures of somebody like Christine McCarthy and then shortly after LaTondra Newton, who probably was none too happy that it seemed inevitable that yet another old white man would soon be in charge of Disney once again. Hopefully the board will make better decisions this time, because maybe just somebody like Mr. Staggs is the right person to lead Disney down the road. We don't know for sure, but certainly the board has got to do something with Disney's stock price continuing to sit in the toilet. Of course, the stock did bounce up a few points after this announcement, as people think maybe there is some hope for some type of change. But of course, we don't know what that change actually will be, if anything at all yet. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know if you think bringing in Mayer and Staggs again means anything of significance. I'm curious to read the room on this one. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and until next time, take care.